And welcoming everybody to the Fantasy Firebox episode 28. Been a couple weeks. Things happening, things, going on, family and things of that nature. John won't be with us tonight. He'll be back next week. But we got the 3P box going here today. Tony Jigsaw Cotillo, Jason Sullivan, Dan Green. A lot of things to talk about. We're going to talk a little MVPs and DFS for NBA, a little undervalued guys, which were a ton tonight. We could talk about that kind of really are starting to step up, and those numbers are going to start to go up. We're talking a little MLB preview. We got a Nolan Arenado trade to talk about. Has a lot of fancy repercussions at that Cardinals team. I don't know, Cardinals or Padres, going to have a ton of offensive help out there. And we're going to talk a little Super Bowl, do a little Super Bowl lineup, talk about who we would start, maybe who will be a little MVP for fantasy discussion. But again, it's been a great week, not Northeast because snow sucks. Jason, you probably know all about that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not used to that. It makes me want to move to Florida every time we get 3 inches of snow, let alone 13 or more. I don't even know what we got. But let's get right into the NBA discussion because there has been a ton. One of the guys I even talked about today on my Fox Sports A Gambler fantasy hit was Stephen Curry. Now, last week I talked about Zion Williamson, a guy under $8,000 that just needs to be in your lineup. He's consistently 40 points every contest, and his number doesn't go up. Steph Curry, the same thing, and he's under 10 grand. You have guys like Dame and Giannis, 10,700. Steph is consistently at 96 and 9,700. Dropped 73 last night, and his lowest game was 38. It's always 40 or 50. What are people looking at? I don't get it, but he is definitely going to be in my lineup every day. So, Jason, what's up, buddy? How you doing? What do you think? Who is, in your mind, your MVPs of the – I know Dan's going to have a ton of them, so I'll ask you first. Who's your NBA MVPs for DFS?
So Steph's a great one, obviously. Like you said, the pricing is the most confusing thing when it comes to Steph. It's just he's so consistent, especially with no Clay. I mean, he's a monster this year. Yep. My MVP, though, I'd say 1A, 1B with Curry is Luka. It's just I know that he's priced high. He's always priced high, but what guy gives you the floor that he gives you and also the ceiling at the same time? I feel like Luka could go out and score 80 in a given day. I mean, I think he did a few weeks ago. I had him in my lineup. He scored 80 points one day. His bad games are still in the high 40s. So I just love him, especially with that team. It doesn't matter if Porzingis plays or doesn't play. It seems like that team isn't very good. And so Luka just absolutely dominates. I mean, I saw it today. He had a good first half again, hit a buzzer beater at the end of the first half. And he hits it so many different categories. And that's what I love about him.
He does. And then that's why it brought to me the Steph Curry factor because Luka, I mean, there's been times I've seen him at 11,100. I mean, huge number. Now, again, he gives you the production, but it really limits what you do with the rest of your lineup. And if you can drop $1,800 less and get Steph Curry, whatever you want to call him, and you want to be professional or not, we'll just call him Steph, but for lack of argument. But if you can get 60, 50, or even 45 for 94 to 9,500, even 9,700, I'm doing it every day of the week because, again, listen, we'll talk about Fred VanVleet later, who dropped 73 the other night. Ridiculous to thought that, but guys like Steph Curry, to me, have to be one of your MVPs. So, Dan, 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. I know you're going to go through them all. Who do you got?
No. I agree with Jason because every time I play a lineup, Luke is always in the lineup that, either is right on my tail or ahead of me. The Joker is always a great play. These are guys that are priced high, but guys that produce. And I discussed a few shows ago that I love Steph Curry for exactly what you said, mainly because he's on a bad team. I really am starting to play, and that's why Luka is so valuable because I'm getting killed the occasions where I play players on a good team. Like LeBron killed me one game because he played like 22 minutes, and then I lost a lot of points. I think I had the proverbial snowflake. That the game I played LeBron recently. Yeah, the snowflake, man. But if you could put a lineup with like Steph Curry and Clint Capella together, you're golden. I mean, Capella is someone, maybe I'm jumping the gun, the category a little bit, but that guy who would have thought that he'd be a consistent 40 to 60 point guy? He was like a stiff that Atlanta signed, right?
Yep.
That Houston couldn't wait to get rid of. And I remember Jason, and this is no knock on Jason. We were like, oh, Christian Woods is such a better version of Capella. And he is, but Capella has really been a beast this year. Surprisingly so. So, I mean, those are the guys that stand out for me. I mean, obviously, the concern about someone like Joel Embiid, as great as he's been, you just get nervous about his minute restrictions if he's going to, at the last second, take a game off. But again, I'm trying to target guys on bad teams.
That's a good point. I mean, that's exactly what you want. Rich Jackson says, bad teams equal more minutes. Al checking in. What's up, Al? As always, our boy, Hate Ratio Sports, Half Court Heat. But here's the thing. You mentioned these guys, and they're still that, Clint Capella, I think, is getting up there. He's over 9,000 now for a while, right? For a while. But there's also guys, not just, MVPs because of their, they are production based on their high value. There's also guys that are MVP because of their production is based on low value or value wise, I should say. Guys like Malcolm Brogdon. 7,900, 7,500. This guy consistently 45 to 50. One game he gets 38, next game he gets 47, and he gets 42. Between 40 and 50, I should say. And if you want to formulate your lineup based around guys like that, it's not a bad thing. Like last night, I got hurt a little bit. I had a bad beat. I got like you said, Dan, the snowflake. There's nothing more that's worse than you open up that DraftKings app and you see 3 snowflakes. I'm like, I want to throw my phone across the wall, right? Like, come on, man, with the damn snowflakes, right? Pascal Siakam, boom, kill me again, snowflake, right? Jaylen Brown, snowflake. Like, come on, man, Jaylen Brown, are you kidding me? You're playing Golden State. Like, what is going on? Like, it's just, again, it's frustrating. But those guys are the guys you really have to seek out because, listen, it's a percentage too. And that's the other thing. Like, everybody wants to start James Harden. And that's great. I mean, listen, all you need to do is go through your standings and you look and you see those top 10 teams all have basically 80% of the same guys. It's those 1 or 2 guys that nobody, whether it be, Garrison, what's Garrison, not Garrison Harris, I'll think of his name. But got, guys like
Gary.
What's that?
Gary Harris?
No, not Gary Harris. Garrison. I'm trying to think of the guy, but again, the low value guy. Xavier Tillman was a guy for a little bit, and now all of a sudden his number. Look, say MSU, right? But his number is getting up there. But they're guys that are like 7% value percentage. I mean, it's so low. If you hit on those guys, that's what makes you solid. So guys like Brogdon are guys for me. Jason, are any guys in your 7 to 8,500 range that you think are undervalued and guys that should be in your lineup all the time?
You know what's funny too? First, to piggyback off of what you just said about the snowflake thing, in football you can kind of tolerate one guy gets you 8 points. It's not going to kill you, right? But basketball, it's like you get 1, you can maybe get by. You get 2 snowflakes, you're done. Like 3, you're definitely done. So it's frustrating when you see it. I completely agree with you. 1 or 2 bad games in NBA, and you don't cash. So it's tough. I seem to, for whatever reason, love the Utah Jazz lately in DFS. Jordan Clarkson, he is always cheap, and he has been really solid too. He consistently is a guy that just gets you. He's never gonna he's not gonna score 60 in a game, but kind of what you're talking about, that 30 to 40 to maybe 45 range. He's always there. Rudy Gobert is another one. He's a stat stuffer too. He's not going to put up a ton of points, but he's going to get you some blocks, rebounds, maybe 4 or 5 assists. So I've been playing a ton of Utah, especially lately with Donovan Mitchell out. I feel like that's where you got it. It goes back to the injury thing that we were talking about before. One key piece on any team gets injured, and it's huge. I mean, like Harden for Brooklyn has been out for the past couple of games, and look at how good Durant and Irving have been. I mean, it's just – you pick those injuries, and it's like especially at superstars like those 2 guys, they're going to have 60-point games if Harden's out. So it's all about the injuries, I think, still.
It still is. It still is. And by the way, Garrison Matthews, that's who I'm thinking of from the Washington Wizards. I mean, here's a guy who, let's see, was 3,600 last night. He was only 3,300 before. He gets you 16 to 20. And again, when you're going to, the reason why guys like that are so important, and again, he's not a roller coaster guy. And I say that because he's not a guy that gives you 16 and he has a game of 3. And then he gives you 7. No, these are consistent guys that give you between 16 to 22 that you can get under $4,000. And when you build your lineup of guys like Paul George and Chris Paul and Luka and Giannis, you need these guys. And it's all about matchups, too. There's always that one game, Dan, I'll tell you. And I see now not been picking it correctly lately, but it's always that one game that is a huge score game, like with Sacramento and New Orleans the other night, where everybody's blowing up. Like, right? Charlotte's had a couple of those. Cleveland is notorious for games like that. Phoenix the other night, Chris Paul had a monster game. It's always, if you can hit them right, it's just crazy when you look at it and see that they can score that amount of points. It's unbelievable, man.
But Jason nailed it too. If you track the injury reports, like Guillermo Hernando Gomez is a good value because Adams is hurt right now. Even I don't like him that much, but Luke Kennard has given you 3 or 4 straight games in the upper 20s, and he's valued around 4,000. With Marcus Smart being hurt, you could go modestly with Jeff Teague at 4,700, or even take a flyer on Carson Edwards in a really low 3,000 range. So you just got to track the injuries. And Tony, I'm clearly relatively new to being into basketball this year. I played around in the past, but you would answer this more than you can answer this more than anyone. Pre-COVID nonsense. Did you ever see anything like this as far as tracking injuries before? And right. So it's almost like so advantageous to get involved this year with DFS basketball, because all you got to do is a little research, and you could be ahead of the crowd. And
it's funny.
And real fast, Tony. Right. How many times have you been killed by you got it, you're in the money, and then all of a sudden the game goes in overtime, and then. And then a couple players that are on your tail get garbage overtime points.
I hate that.
Yeah, that's another. That's a killer. It came to mind when you talked about those monster games, the high scoring games. That overtime popped into my head.
Nothing like that, man. You go from first to 432nd with like you're like, wait, what the hell is happening, man?
Oh no.
Oh
yeah.
I don't know what's worse. That or
the Joker killed me that way. He went into overtime. I'm like, I'm done.
You just know it. You got me in our league with Richard Holmes. I thought I was cleaning up. I'm number 1. I fell to number 3 because Holmes and RJ Barrett had a freaking turnover.
A turnover to block within 10 seconds.
Yeah. Like, what is that, man? Like, come on. But that's how this game is played. But you made a good point about the injuries, because this year, it is so advantageous to sit there and watch at least 20 minutes off the game time, because it changes so much. And God, again, it's not just injuries too. It's because this is a condensed season. People seem to forget that. It still is a condensed season. It's not normal. And guys are going to get more time to rest than usual. Guys, like, listen, there's also going to be guys, you have to look at the matchup. Jason, you'll know about this. You have to look at, is this going to be a blowout? Because it's going to be a blowout, I'm going to spend $10,000 on Joel Embiid. He's only going to play 27 minutes, right? Because they're going to blow him out, and then you're really screwed, right? So you really have to do, it's like, I don't want a good defensive matchup. I don't want a blowout. So you have to really pick that perfect game and grab about 2 to 3 players from that game. And if you hit on that, you're solid.
Yeah, that's a great point. And kind of like what Dan was saying too, studying the rosters, like, it doesn't take that much time, but if you can learn the secondary options on these teams, like, everybody's going to know, like you said, Harden, Durant, Kyrie, Embiid, these stars, everybody knows them. But what happens if, a different guy in the starting 5 is out, or what happens if Embiid misses a game? Who really benefits from that? Because it's not always a direct correlation to, okay, Embiid's out, whoever starts at center. That's not always the correlation. It could be Embiid's out, so Tobias Harris is a lot better when Embiid's out, or Harden's out, so that directly impacts Durant, pretty much like that. You got to know kind of the secondary options on these teams, and the more you study it, the more you kind of go over it, you just start to kind of realize in your head, okay, today Donovan Mitchell's out. Okay, well that means Jordan Clarkson's going to start for him. He's better, which then feeds off. Joe Ingles is going to come in. He's, he might get you 25, 30 points. It's like you kind of got to know those secondary options. And that's how I feel like you're where the money's really made.
It is. Last night, perfect. Look, Aaron Gordon gets out. He's out 4 to 6 weeks, and Gary Clark starts. And again, Gary Clark, $3,300, got 15 points. Honestly, that's a huge deal, especially for a team who maybe had Giannis and Harden and spent 25 grand collectively on 2 guys. You throw a guy in for 3,300 that gets you 15, that's success. But you don't know that if you're not paying attention. Here's the thing. You could go to any, whether it be DraftKings, FanDuel, you go to any place that's supplying you with information. They're all going to give you the same guy, stud, value. That's fine. But don't go with that just simply because they state it. You got to read in between those numbers. Just because they're telling you that doesn't mean it's absolutely going to come to fruition. You have to read inside those lines. Look at so many different elements. Go back, look at the history. Okay, if it's not a rookie, if we're talking, say it's Jimmy Butler against Jason Tatum, go back and look at the 5 or 6 game history. See how Jimmy Butler's defended Jason Tatum. And think, you know what? Even though Jason Tatum's a good player, this might not be his night. Just like football. When you look at guys that are going up against Jalen Ramsey, it's like, even if he's not a stud, it's like, okay, I need to really look at this matchup. So you really got to go in depth with these things. And injuries are huge, but depth charts are tremendous. So, Dan, when we talk about depth charts, is there any guy that you've been leaning on that's been a depth guy over the last couple of weeks that probably undervalued a lot?
That's a good question. There's the Joe Harrises of the world,
yep.
The Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, he's another guy who just got hurt, and then you got to think about, do you play with Theo Maledon, to take a spot? So but I love Shea. I love Joe Harris. Joe Harris, I mentioned before, has burned me, but he also has had some really good games as well. And and Jason mentioned Jordan Clarkson has been a godsend for me at times. So that's those are players that off the top of my head jump out at me. I'm trying to think of guys that are like always my go-to players in my lineup that I often use a lot. And it's funny. It's funny. There's so many ways to go. I'll do my research, and let's say I go with Edwards for example. So do I build low and go, oh my God, I got a lot of money left. Now I can squeeze Luka in there. I can squeeze maybe Giannis in there now. And then I'm like, you know what? But those value guys, that's just too many $4,000 guys. I got to change it up. So then I start stacking from high to low. So you just got to play. And it goes back to the advice that I remember you've used so many times talking to your boys. You got to do so many configurations of lineups. Now, if you want to play like me, sometimes too many lineups, play them all and then, see what shakes out. But if you really want to narrow down a great lineup, you just got to do your homework. You got to really find that obscure player who is going to get minutes because of crazy injury situations. Jason always talks about ownership. So you got to follow that as well. You've got the obscure player that has not a lot of ownership and he goes off, you're golden. If you're the guys that usually have the fire symbols do their job.
Well, that's the thing. You want a lot of fire symbols, which I think we're going to write to DraftKings too because I think they stole half of our logo with that fire symbol. But I will get to that another day. For the heat ratio. But now I'm just kidding.
Very good point.
Did they patent that? Is what I want to know. Did they patent that? Because I did. But now at the one of the guys again, Rich mentioned earlier about guys on bad teams getting more. Kent Bazemore is another guy for me. That is. Listen again. This guy is on a bad team in Golden State, listen, he only plays on 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. But again, he's $3,000, never moves off that number, and he gets you double-digit fantasy points. He's always getting double-digit fantasy points. It's crazy. If you look at it, his last game, he had 22 points, right? Last 10 days, 13 and a half. For the year, he's 14 points per game, fantasy-wise, for $3,000. They're the guys that you have to hit on. They're the guys. He's one of my favorites. Clarkson, I've had in a lineup. He's one of my favorites. I'll tell you another guy. He's not a 3,000 guy, but Enos Kanter has been unbelievable. He has been unbelievable. He is consistently at 40 points, and he's only 7,000 all the time. So he's another guy at the center position that you could really, really give you production consistently. He doesn't budge off his numbers because he does so much. So, there's just a ton of MVPs out there. It's just formulating your roster the right way. Again, it's not going to be great one day. It may be great the next. It's not always going to be great, but your time will be very well invested if you spend it wisely. I guarantee that you will see the time play out and your investment change based on the research that you do. Now, when we look at the big guys again, and we look at, the Damian Lillards, and we look at the Giannis's and the Lucas, for me, last night I tried something different, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on this. So I was always on the impression I needed a $10,000 guy. And my buddy Sean Briggs mentioned it the other day. He's like, I can't get away from not having at least one guy at 10,000, right? And it is because if you pick that right 10,000, it was Harden for weeks. He consistently was giving you like 50 to 60 points. Luke is another guy. So I did something a little different. I went with 4 guys that were in that $7,000 to $8,000 range. One guy was, I think Paul George was 9,300, but guys that were over 45 points per game. And I was like, all right, let me get 4 guys in a lineup that are going to give me 40 to 45 average and hope that 1 or 2 won't give me 60. It didn't work. They all gave me exactly like 40. So I don't know, like your thoughts. Like, do you guys do one over the other, or Jason? Do you always have a $10,000 guy in your lineup, or do you kind of try to tinker with them from day to day?
I typically always have one $10,000 guy at least, just because I would say even a little bit lower, maybe like 9,700 to whatever the highest number is. But I think kind of what you just said right there is like you always put that Harden in or that Luka in because I don't know about you, but I don't want to miss on my top guy. So I just feel like, okay, I'm going to put Luka in. I'm guaranteeing I start with 50 points. It could go to 80. It could go 60, 70, depending on, what kind of game he has. But I think it's just like a comfort factor. And that's the thing about DFS. They always like the people that always win all the time always say I've heard so many say it in so many different sports too. If your GPP lineup doesn't make you feel a little uncomfortable, like at least parts of it, you're not doing it right, because you're not going to win one of these big tournaments unless you have a lineup that kind of makes you get the little rumbles in your stomach. Because I do it in golf all the time too. Same thing, where it's like you have 1 or 2 guys in your lineup that you're like, oh my god, if he hits, obviously this is going to be huge, but it kind of makes you a little bit nauseous when you look at your lineup and you're like, oh my god, I got to count on these 2 guys. But that's how you win.
It makes sense. I think I was burned a couple times by the top guy. I spent all that money, and it was like, for 2 nights in a row, he didn't give me that 50. He gave me like a 38. But again, I guess the other way to look at this is, and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you formulate your lineup correctly, using some of the theories that we presented about low value guys and guys that are consistent, even if you do spend $10,700 for Luka Doncic and instead of 60, he gives you 40, you should be able to come back from that if you do it right. It's just, I think I just wasn't doing it right for a while.
Well, I kind of, it's funny. You mentioned a strategy that I've tried too. In fact, my last lineup in our league was that strategy. I took Sabonis and Brogdon as my 2 highest priced guys, and they both were mediocre. And I think Paul Millsap had the most points for me in my lineup, because again, he was a value play because of, injuries and whatnot. So, but generally where I've been successful, I'll have like Luka, Paul George, I'll have Jokic, Zach LaVine, I think my best lineup I think Jeremy Grant when he wasn't quite Jeremy Grant, and he's cooled off a bit. I think the Sixers actually put him in a little bit of a cold streak, but
Ben Simmons.
Yeah, but I mean, one time I think one of my better lineups, I think I had George, Jeremy Grant, Jaylen Brown, and somebody else. I mean, I think I had two really high priced guys, and the guys I mentioned weren't quite there yet. But that was a Friday night where I played the Cole Anthonys of the world that gave me production in the $3,000 range because I just did some homework and saw that a team was decimated with COVID and you had to start this player or that player. So again, I'm no genius. I don't get my knowledge from watching game after game. My lifestyle and my viewership isn't 24/7 basketball. I gotta watch hockey, brother. And
Flyer night, baby.
But I still watch games and I do a lot. I do it right. Thanks. I tee that up for you. Thank you.
Got it.
No, but seriously, I watch basketball, but I'm not a junkie, and I do my research. I find that I get more satisfaction beating the basketball junkies by doing the obscure homework, and that's kind of what's happened in our Friday basketball leagues. I'm doing pretty well with that, and I have nowhere near your knowledge, but I can put it. I can. You give me axe throwing, and I'll be able to put a decent DFS lineup together because I'll do research.
Hey, I have a question.
DFS axe throwing.
Wow.
Sorry.
That's all good, Jay.
Can I ask you guys a question about building lineups? So when obviously there's some guys that you have to hit on, right? You have to hit on it. If you take a guy that's 10,000 or more, you have to hit on that guy. But say let's just talk about like the middle range. Are you looking for guys that are consistent that are going to give you, say, 40 points a game? Or do you guys look for more of like the boomer bust type of play where a guy could get you 25, but he could get you 60?
See, for me, I like to feel good and comfortable. I'm not a big risk taker. I'd rather get the guys like I keep saying, but Zion Williamson to me is so consistent. Even though I would have still drafted John Moran, we'll get into that later. But I got to throw that in there because, again, I'm still a jaw guy. But, when it comes to DFS, Zion is as consistent as they come. So I'd rather know I'm going to spend $7,900 for Zion, and he's going to give me 40 no matter what. It's a lock. But he may give me 50 or 60 on a good night. Maybe he dumps the 30, but those 10 points to me aren't really going to affect me because I think I'll be able to make it up. But there are those guys that you talk about. But one of the guys that boned me last night was Siakam. Now, Siakam was a guy who the only reason why I went with Siakam last night is because the last two games he started to trend upwards. He was 37 and 47. I'm like, all right, this is going to be a good play for him. I think he could actually hit the 50 number tonight. But he's another guy that's been as low as 20 and 25. So, and he burned me. So, again, I would much rather go consistency than boom or bust. Just my opinion, depending on who my top guy is. I will say that. So if I'm going to formulate my lineup around, say, I always say my big three. So I'm going to get my big three, and they're going to be guys that are 45 points or higher, and they're going to be around in the 9,000 range. Then I'll go with that boomer bust guy. I will. But if I'm going to go with a guy who's 10,000 or higher, then I'm gonna make sure all the rest of my guys are consistent, just in case that 10,000 guy doesn't live up to expectations. What do you think, Dan?
No, I think the guys that low 8,000, is that where you're going for, Jason?
Some of them. I mean, yeah,
like
exactly.
I would say, just, range, even 6 to 8.
Like Brandon Ingram type players fits that mold where he can have a monster game, but he's going to consistently get you 40 points. Now I know Julius Randle is in the upper 8s, but I've been so impressed with the growth of his game. You could say he is on a crack. Well, actually the Knicks, but his game has gotten so both those guys. A couple years ago, what were your thoughts on Brandon Ingram and Julius Randle?
Well, first of all, I love KU. I love Kansas. So I was always Randall to me was like, well, Julie. I'm thinking of no. Where Julius Randall? He's Kansas guy, right?
Kentucky.
Kentucky. I'm sorry.
You got your K's.
Yeah, I got the K. I'm my bad.
Both
So
Lakers, though, right?
yes, they're true. Well, wait, wait a minute. That was it. John Randall. John Randall was in Kansas. I mean, we're going back.
Minnesota
John
Vikings.
Randall's Syracuse, I think, wasn't it? I don't even know.
Was a
no, that's John Wallace. John Wallace.
Oh, that's John Wallace. You're right.
Yeah, there's a Randall. I think it was John Randall. I'd have to go back again. These are like I'm talking Roy Williams, Kansas days, like back in the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But nah. Listen, anybody who comes out of Kentucky is always going to be a quality player. It's just it's in their culture. It's just who they are. But Brandon Ingram, I didn't think he'd be the player that he is. I didn't like his mold, his body type. I was like, you know what I mean? But he's actually turned into a really nice player. And again, I think that has to do with coaching.
Opportunity and coaching,
right? Opportunity and coaching. So yeah, I always thought Ingram was going to be okay, but I honestly thought Randall was going to be the better player because I just thought he was built more for the for the down and low pound that he's doing right now for the Knicks.
Does he give you any? I already know the answer. Does he give you any Zach Randolph thoughts?
Oh,
Jason, Michigan State.
Same body type for sure.
Yeah,
they're both bangers. Yeah.
I think Randall's much better with the ball. Ball handling skill wise. But
what the thing about Randall?
I love Randolph.
Is he the best player on a bad team? Right? Because I think about that. Like if you took him off the Knicks and put him on, I don't know, the Lakers or put him on Portland, would he be the same player? I don't think he would.
But I think he wouldn't because he's got complementary pieces now that are sharing the ball. But you can just tell that guy has a confidence level that he never had before. He's got the aura about him. He's got he knows he's good. I don't think he had that feeling in with Los Angeles. So to your point, being on a bad team and being the top dog on a bad team, I think has just given him confidence. I think he would thrive on any team, to be honest with you. Now, obviously not putting up monster numbers because again, you gotta share the ball to some extent, but he exudes confidence. So I think he would be fine. Like
it's almost like that.
Michael Carter Williams, when he won Rookie of the Year, you knew he was garbage. You knew he was garbage. He was just on a. He was
baby.
Listen. You knew he was garbage on a bad team because he got a lot of minutes on just a horrific team, and now he's just he's on everyone's. He's been on everyone's roster since.
This is true. 100%.
It's almost like Kevin Love back in the day when he was on Minnesota. He was a monster. I mean, I didn't play as much fantasy back then, but he was a beast when he was on Minnesota. He was 28-12 kind of guy. And then he goes to the Cavs, and it's like he was definitely the third fiddle. Now it's like, he's paid like
he's old now.
Like
but
he's a superstar. Well, yeah, but he was
a stud. He was a stud then on Minnesota. He was a stud,
right? But he gets paid like he's a stud now, and he's good, but he's not a superstar.
You get killed in the back end when you sign someone early. That's the problem in every sport.
You listen to LeBron.
Well, then they're special people. Then, yeah.
I was going to say,
different category.
100%. Now, look, we got some good company here on this show because let's just do a little recap of the Heat Ratio Sports DFS crossover league. That, and I'm going to throw this out there too for some of these deadbeats, okay, that got invited to this league that don't like to show up. Okay, I'm just going to start to kick you out. Okay, because here's the deal, man. We have 34 people that are signed up in this league, and I'm lucky if I get 14 people to put a lineup in every week, which is ridiculous. I don't understand. If you don't want to play, that's fine. Let me know so I can get your ass out of there and get somebody who wants to play.
I'll inspire you. Try to beat me.
Well, there you go. And this is what I'm talking about because I'm looking at the leaderboard right now, and all three of us are in the top 10, but only one guy is in the top 3, and that's Mr. Dan Green, and who's placed 3 times this year already, okay, in 4 contests. Dan Green
twice.
and placed 3 times. So that's pretty impressive. I've placed once. Jason, you got to get on the ball, brother. You got to play for one of these things.
Jason's boss is my nemesis.
Yes, exactly. And that's the thing, Mr. Chill 1976. Okay, he's placed 3 out of 4, and he's the number one guy. He's 122 points, but Dan's only 1 point behind him for the
who's earned the most though. I'm curious.
What's that?
Who's earned the most? I'm curious.
That would be Mr. Chill. No, that would be Mr. Dan Green. Mr. Dan Green earned the most at 72.45. Mr. Chill is 65.92.
Mr. Chill, let me just talk about Mr. Chill for a second. He's like that guy that we all got a buddy like him. Like, that guy that's good at everything and it kind of pisses you off. That's Mr. Craig Hill. Like, you invite him to play softball on your team and he's the best guy there. He tells you, "Oh yeah, when I was in high school, I was in a dunk contest and I want to get Shane Battier." I'm like, "What the
Shane Battier?"
That's what he told me. He's like, I was in the Michigan high school dunk contest and Shane Battier won it. I'm like, what?
That was a part-time porn star.
Yeah. He looks like freaking Paul Walker. Makes me sick.
Wow.
Really?
We need to get in some people's asses because like Rich Check says average 13 to 14 playing on Fridays. Listen, I want to get 20, man. The goal is to get 20. Here's the deal. I don't make it public only because if I make it public, what happens is, a bunch of people join and then the guys actually won in there can't get it. So I want to make sure it's scripted, but I want people that actually want to play. So if you're out there and you're listening and you haven't joined, or if you did join and haven't played yet, that's a lot of people. Okay, there's a lot of people that haven't even put a lineup in. 14 people have never even played one time. So if that's the case, what the hell are you doing? That's what I have to ask. But anyway, one thing's for sure, it's been fun. It gives me something to look forward to every Friday. One thing, I'm going to be full transparent here. My other league, again, I was kicking ass in baseball, which we're going to talk about in a minute. I was doing good in football, placing top 5 every week in the DFS analyst league that I'm in with guys from Roto World and ESPN. Mike Clay from ESPN's in it. And in basketball, I'm embarrassed to even put out there what I've been doing, man. It's just my first 4 or 5 weeks have not been good. I haven't even sniffed the top 10. I don't know what's going on. So I need to really make a comeback here. I feel it this Friday. I can feel it in my bones. But let's talk about baseball for a little bit. We'll talk about baseball now. And the reason why is because it's already coming out that the season may be delayed. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. I wouldn't mind it. Wouldn't hate it. I mean, there's so much stuff that we're doing right now. I mean, look, Dan, Flyer and Ice, Jason, Fairway to Heaven. I mean, so many different aspects of sports. I'm getting crazy right now, right? It's like every day. So I wouldn't mind if we push baseball back just a little bit. But speaking of baseball, Nolan Arenado, and we have to touch on it. I know he's not Scott Rowland, Dan, but he is.
Listen, he's better than Scott Rowland for sure, all around. But Tony, and this is a joke because I said in my viewing lifetime, there's no better fielding third baseman than Scott Rowland. Now, it's obviously, you can argue the point, but that's where this little joke's coming from. Scott Rowland doesn't have the complete game with the bat that Arenado has. But
you know what's funny, though?
The greatest glove I've ever seen. Well, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, it's funny about Rowland because he always looked like he was so big. That bat looked like a toothpick up there. Like he was swinging.
He did use a small bat.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. But Nolan Arenado goes from, the friendly confines of Coors Field and goes to a pretty, it's not an advantageous park for hitters. It's in St. Louis. I mean, I'm not saying it's not easy. I'm not saying it's extremely difficult, but it's kind of like what Safeco Field used to be. It's not a field where just home runs fly out of the park like Coors Field. So let me ask you guys this, and this is why I wanted to bring this up, because when these big trades come, we have to analyze this as DFS guys. Do you think, Jason, that his numbers are embossed a little bit because of Coors Field? Or so he was already, in my opinion, a top 5 pick. But Does that have any movement based on now he's going to be playing in St. Louis instead of Colorado, where, let's face it, St. Louis, he's going to have more lineup protection, but he's also not going to be the main focal point as much as he was in Colorado. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a good point. You kind of just brought up both sides of that argument. I feel
Right.
like he's probably not going to struggle because, or his numbers won't take a huge dip because he's an incredibly complete baseball player. He hits for average. He hits for power. Like you said, maybe we see a very slight dip in home runs, but his RBIs are probably going to go up because he's on a lot better team that's going to be contending for the playoffs. He was in a situation in Colorado where him and Story. I mean, who else in their lineup has scared you for the past 8 years? Nobody. I mean, that's not a very good team, and with an owner and GM that don't know how to manage and don't know how to set up a team for success. I don't know. St. Louis is one of the better teams in the NL now, so I think his numbers will be just fine. And like I said, he's so consistent. I mean, it's like 35 to 40 home runs a year, 110 to 120 RBIs, and he's going to hit you 310, 300, 310 each year. So he's incredibly consistent. And I'm going to say there's two. Okay, I like Scott Rowland. I love Scott Rowland when he plays. There's two third basemen in the game right now that are better fielders than him: Manny Machado and Arenado.
Ooh,
Listen,
I like that.
Coming from a guy who loves Scott Rowland.
I can't argue with the two great guys you mentioned. I just thought Scott Rowland was a flawless third baseman, and because he, like Tone mentioned, he was a big guy. He covered a lot of. He had a great range. So listen, I'm not gonna. I can't argue Arenado. He's just so smooth, and Machado, has the shortstop range also. So I can't argue it. Listen, we're picking hairs here, but the ultimate reason we brought up Rowland last night was because we had a whole feature on the mockery of the Hall of Fame, and Rowland, to me, is borderline Hall of Famer because he's an 8 Gold Glove winner, solid stick. No one ever confused him with using steroids, and he got clumped into that whole group of no one's getting in, and that's how he came up last night. So,
well, here's an interesting spark of conversation based on Nolan Arenado, and the reason why I asked this is because ESPN, they released their obviously their head-to-head top rankings for Major League Baseball for fantasy, and I always look at these because I'm always curious to see. Now, obviously, pitchers are involved here when we talk about their top 100. But Arenado was 17th, right behind Manny Machado. And then when he got traded, they bumped him down to 33rd, which is very interesting to me. I mean, he dropped 15 spots because he's going to St. Louis, which I'm not trying to read much into that. I'm just saying that in their mind, I mean, they have him ranked as a 7th third baseman, which I think is ridiculous. In my opinion, for them, I'll just tell you guys right now, it's Jose Ramirez 1, Machado 2, Devers 3, Rendon 4, Bregman 5th, LeMahieu 6th, and Arenado at 7th. What do you got, Jason? What do you think, man? You think he deserves to be 7th in the third baseman category, 33rd overall? I mean, I would think he needs to be up at least in the top 20. Again, I know it's pitchers in there too, is why I'm saying it. But what do you think? You think that's a little crazy?
I think that's really crazy. I mean, yeah, he played at Coors Field. Obviously, that's an advantage. Nobody's going to argue that one. But you also play 81 games away from Coors. I mean, that's a lot of a sample size. And the dude is so consistent. I mean, he's always been streaky. He's streaky whether it's at home or on the road. He'll have 20 games where he's the best hitter in the game, and then he'll have 20 games where he's not that good. He's always kind of done that. But I don't understand that drop at all. And I don't know. I've owned Jose Ramirez, and he's a good player, but I don't know how you put him at 1 in that category.
Yeah.
I really don't. It doesn't make any sense to me. I think Arenado's either 1 or 2 in that category. I'd take him over any of those guys.
Me too. I mean, Dan, what do you think? I'm puzzled here.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I was the manager where I'd put him in my batting order. Do you have now if he's behind Goldschmidt, that hurts him, right? Goldschmidt gets protected in the lineup and because Arenado's behind him, and I think he's projected to bat 4th. Now, if they projected him as a number 3 hitter and Goldschmidt hitting 4th, I think that would help his value because now you can't pitch around him.
True.
So it's who's hitting behind. Arenado is the key. Dylan Carlson Does he put the fear of God into pitchers? I don't think so. Dexter Fowler. So I think that's the issue, is who's hitting behind him. You can pitch around him.
No, it's true. It's going to be interesting because this is the kind of thing that happens, when you start doing your projections and you get ready for the season, because you have to kind of emulate what this manager is going to do, where he's going to hit in the lineup. That's why I've always said, I don't know, again, and this is no slight on hockey, Dan, because I don't play fantasy hockey, but I in my opinion, Major League Baseball, what's that?
And you shouldn't, because it's so difficult. It's so damn difficult.
Well, fantasy baseball to me is the most difficult fantasy sport to play. There is so much to look into. There's so much information. Again, just the matter of what you just said, hitting third or fourth in a lineup can drop your draft
Absolutely.
10 to 20 slots. And people don't, and that's huge. And then the worst part is you go into the season drafting the guy. Say you draft Arenado because it comes out he's going to be the cleanup hitter. And all of a sudden, in the first 2 weeks not working, they put him to third. You're like, oh, like that just, I mean, right. It's tough. I mean, you really have to draft well when it comes. And I still say, both of you guys tell me if I'm wrong. I don't care if you have 5 Nolan Arenados. You do not win in Major League Baseball, DFS, or year-long fantasy if you do not have at least 2 stud pitchers. If not, I'm sorry, you can't band-aid a pitching staff in fantasy. You have to have legit starters. And I'll tell you, there's been years where I've taken Clayton Kershaw number 1 overall, only because, you know what? I'd rather get Kershaw at 1. And if I'm playing in a traditional 10-man draft and I'm snaking back to 19 or 20, I'll draft the bat back then. That's going to give me decent production. But I want that number 1 pitcher. JC, you feel the same way?
100%. Absolutely 100%. So, like you said, it's just the pitchers get you points in big bulks. It's like, a batter has a great week. They might score you 40 points in a week, right? That's an awesome week for a hitter. A pitcher could get that in 1 game. So, yeah, I completely agree with you. That's kind of the same situation I ran into last year. I kind of was talking to you guys about off the air, but I dominated in the regular season, and then playoff time came, and I had the most stacked lineup by far in my league, and I didn't even have an ace pitcher. I had a bunch of 3 or 4s, and it's like, come playoff time, I was just searching for anything.
That's what happens. Jason got the frozen of death.
Oh, I'm back now.
He's coming back.
Sort of. Oh, there he is.
But again, what we say? Yeah.
So, anyways, I was
just
saying, like, right? I was going basically piecing together 3 and 4 starters on the team, like number 3 and 4 starters for their teams. It's like there's so much luxury to have that Jacob deGrom or somebody that you can count on every single time they pitch. So I completely agree with you. Hitting's great, but you want those stud pitchers.
You have to. And Dan, one thing with the pitchers that you have to look at, we talked in basketball about, more minutes on bad teams, right? Pitching is the opposite. You don't want pitchers on bad teams.
No.
Like that's the thing. I mean, you look at this year, I'll tell you what, and tell me what you think, Dan, but I'm looking at right away, I'm looking at Yu Darvish playing on one of the best teams of baseball this year for the San Diego Padres that have really exceeded my expectations on what they were going to do and the moves they have made. A guy like that can easily, him obviously and Garrett Cole, but those 2 guys could be number 1, number 2, respectively.
No, I agree with you. And you could make the argument of DeGrom, but you don't know really, like, to your point, are the Mets going to take that next step and be an upper echelon team in the NL East? If not, you gotta go Darvish.
You have to. I think,
but I would suspect that DeGrom is probably ranked higher in a lot of sites, but I would go Darvish because the Padres are on the uptick for sure.
The one thing with pitching is, and I keep waiting for this year, and I it wasn't so much last year, but I think it'll be this year. There's 2 guys I'm looking at. Number 1, Clayton Kershaw, a guy who's unbelievable, but just can't stay healthy. The guy just can't stay healthy. When he's in there, he's great, but he just can't stay healthy. The other guy is when is the year that Max Scherzer just completely drops off and his back cracks, his arm falls off, because he's 36 years old. He can't continue to dominate like he's been. So one of these years, somebody's going to overdraft Max Scherzer, and it's really going to kick him in the ass. It really is. And it's always like, do I want to? I know he's really good. He's on a good team. I really want to draft him, but I don't want to be that guy. But at the same time, I don't want to miss out on him either. For me personally, I think I would kind of miss out on him. Honestly, I think I would. I don't think I'm touching Max Scherzer this year. I don't know, Jason. What do you think?
I completely agree with you on that. I love Max Scherzer. First off, he was a former Tiger. I absolutely love the guy. But he's 30, like you said, 36 years old, thrown a crap ton of innings in the regular season and the postseason, and he has a weird, violent delivery, which Kershaw's kind of in the same boat. He's got that weird motion where it's like he puts a lot of strain on his arm, and it's like those guys eventually hit a point where pitchers have a really steep decline. Like it's like they lose it like right away unless they reinvent themselves, which neither one of those guys do. So yeah, I completely agree with you. And I feel like another point with fantasy that we were talking about pitching wise is you got to hit on the top end guys, yes, for sure, but you got to find a stud later in the draft too. You got to find that guy that's low owned, maybe a number 4 or 5 pitcher on a team that ends up being one of your 2-3 best pitchers. That's how you win leagues.
That's a great point. A great point. And the other great point you brought up was the innings. Because again, Max Scherzer is a guy who's 200 plus innings every single year, and 200 innings is the equivalent in baseball to the 300 touches for a running back. So you always have to be careful. We always it brings back the Marco Murray syndrome, right? We talk about that in football. He gets that 300 K the next year. He takes a crap. Well, in baseball, it's not necessarily 200 innings, from last year. It's 200 innings consistently. You have to be careful of that. Always look at that number when you're doing your lineups. But Jason, bring a good point. Guys at the low end, those 4th and 5th starters, and it brings up a good point because the Phillies. I know that me and Dan are in Philadelphia, but the Phillies could be that team, and the reason why I say that is you never know. You could find a 3rd starter on your team. Because, listen, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think Zach Wheeler is going to be drafted in those first couple rounds. So, Zach Wheeler had a really decent year last year on not a really good team. So, I think he's even going to be better this year. So, I think he's a guy that's very undervalued and a guy that could easily be your number 3 starter and give you 13 to 15 wins. That's a lot. There's not many 20-game winners anymore in Major League Baseball. So if you can have a lineup or 4 or 5 starters that give you double-digit wins, you're already ahead of the game, man, 100%. That 5th guy could be an interchangeable part, a spot starter. But if you get 4 guys with double-digit wins, I think you're in. What do you think, Dan?
No, that's a very good point. And the Phillies are a tricky team. They thank God for us. You mentioned we're Philadelphia fans. They essentially brought back the same starting 8, and now it's all about the pitching. But Noel is a given, Wheeler's a given, and it looks like Eflin, who could also be that type of guy you're referring to.
Yep.
He took the next step. He finally became a very solid pitcher. So your point is well taken. And the funny thing is, you talked about injuries earlier. I agree with you to some extent about Scherzer, but he's been a horse year after year. So is age 36 going to be much different from age 35? And we just referenced Aaron Nola. He's 27 years old, but talk about a funky arm angle when he throws the ball. And he pitched an entire year where he declined Tommy John surgery, went on the DL, came back, and somehow finished the year without having surgery. And then the following season, it never came up again. So I thought for sure he was destined for, the DL long term, maybe Tommy John missing a year. So that's a guy that scares me inevitably with having a elbow problem. So you just never know with pitchers. And I'm the great giant pitcher that won multiple Cy Youngs. I'm drawing a blank.
Lincecum.
Kane and Lincecum, right?
Tim
Lincecum, Matt Cain were 2 studs for years. And everyone was talking about it was just inevitable with his pitching style that he was going to get hurt. And his career ended early because he got hurt. He had a very unorthodox pitching style, and it finally bit him in the ass. So Aaron Nola concerns me for long-term health. I just his pitching, he's all armed.
Now,
Slingshot style.
Yeah, and again, he hasn't been electric over the years, right? He really hasn't. He hasn't been like, we were expecting him number one starter. Remember he signed that 4-year deal? Everybody's like, he signed a 4-year deal. He left a lot of money on the table. He really
Yeah, that was odd that he signed that
but
contract.
he really hasn't been the number one starter either. We thought he would be.
He has like 4-game stretches where he's awesome, and then he has 4-game stretches where he's mediocre. But I do like him, and knock on wood, he's been healthy. But he's just someone that gives me that gut feeling of DL.
So let me ask you guys this. I kind of put you on the spot, and again, not really on the spot, but you guys have a ton of knowledge, so this will be easy for you. I would just say, give me one guy, because there's always the one guy that you're really set on coming up, especially in baseball for me. There's always that one guy who I say, man, I think this dude's going to be an absolute stud. He was really good last year. He's even going to be better this year. He's a guy I'm targeting as my top 2 or top 3 in my draft. Jason, that guy, whether it be pitcher or bat, who for you is that coming up?
For me, the first name that jumps out, Fernando Tatis Jr. He is a stud. And that team is, like you said, that San Diego team is loaded.
You stole my guy.
They've done a great job building. And I know that's not really like an out of nowhere pick, but I just feel like he's going to keep getting better. I mean, he's good in so many categories. I mean, he's got speed. He's good defensively, which doesn't help you in fantasy, but he's good defensively. He hits for power. It's like that team, they're not only built to win, I feel like they're built the right way. Like, their position players are all young and locked under contract, and now they're building their pitching staff. I feel like that's the way to build, and that team's going to be really exciting to watch for sure.
I completely agree with you, 100%. I completely agree with you. There were so many highlights last year of Fernando Tatis. I mean, and he's got that, that kind of Gary Sheffield swag. Like I said, he does it, because he put so much power behind his swing. And that's what I loved about Sheffield. He put so much power behind his swing. When he hit them out, man, it was a human highlight film. No disrespect to Dominique Wilkins, but it really was. So, Dan, I know you say he stole your thunder with Fernando Tatis. I know there's another guy in your head. For you, who is that guy?
Well, I go with a guy that was always a top 3 guy that had a drop-off season, and I think is going to bounce back, is Christian Yelich. I think he's going to bounce back and be a stud again. And I also like to look at guys that had phenomenal postseasons that maybe build on that confidence-wise. And I think Corey Seager is going to have a better year than most people think.
That's a great name.
It's funny. He hit his potential, the star potential, in the prime time lights, and I just think it's going to boost his confidence towards this coming season. So those are guys that are established, that aren't no-namers, but I like both those guys.
That's okay. Doesn't matter. And that's the point. It's just guys that are either building on postseason success or building on, their next lineup patrol, depending on off-season moves or new coaches, new hitting coaches, new teammates. One guy for me is Juan Soto. I just think this kid is I did not expect him to be the way he is.
No.
22 years old. Nothing bothers this kid. Nothing. I can easily see him being one, if not the top player in baseball, but maybe the top 3 player in baseball this year. And I think he to me, that's the guy I'm targeting, because again, he's on a good team in Washington. He's in a good lineup in Washington. And again, like I said, he's the guy. And he shows his mentality is nothing face him. So I would love, again, 3 great guys that we just mentioned. I love Seager. Seager is another. I mean, if he didn't get injured, he come back for the injury, but he for the Dodgers, he's been tremendous. He really has. And like we said with San Diego, that team is going to be fun to watch this year. I will definitely. Here's the best thing, Jason, I love about that. It's a West Coast team, which means I love the 10 o'clock, 10:30 baseball game. It's like one of my favorites. And now you watch a ton of San Diego Padre games.
You know what's funny too? We kind of all named players, and the one thing they have in common, which isn't really like a attribute in terms of baseball, they all seem to have a ton of fun playing the game. Fernando Tatis does.
Yep.
He's really animated. Soto's like that too. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are like that. It's like they just seem to have a blast. Another one is Francisco Lindor. He's like that too. It's like they always have smiles on their faces. They're always laughing. They seem like they're having a great time playing the game. And then it turns out to be like Cabrera was like that. Miggy Cabrera was like that back in his prime too. It's like he's always smiling, laughing, joking around, and then he goes out there and mashes. It's like those guys kind of all seem to have that in common.
Well, getting back to Soto, I'm sorry, Tom.
No, go ahead, Dan.
I was going to say, going back to Soto, I often have this whenever I have like the water cooler discussion on like who was great during this era, Hall of Fame, not Hall of Fame. I go immediately to the eye test.
Yeah.
He scares me at the plate. As a Phillies fan, I don't worry about you can't get him out. You just can't get him out. When Mookie Betts bats, he's damn good, don't get me wrong. But I feel like we can get him out. Juan Soto, you just feel like he's going to hit a home run every at bat. He's that scary, that good. And Acuna Jr. is the same way.
Yep.
I had seats. My cousin got me seats right. I was on the dugout. I put my drink on the dugout. So I'm watching Acuna from like the greatest perspective. And I forgot who the Phillies were pitching, but the guy was throwing heat. And he's such fast hands, such a good ball player. Just such a natural, such a smooth swing and amazing power. Those two guys, I mean, you could have we could have probably an hour show on who's the better ball player between Acuna and Soto, that they're that good. So baseball is a good hand with young talent, scary young talent. We're talking guys that are 23, 22 years old. And if they were in the Phillies, they'd be babying them in the minors. And that's the kind of team the Phillies are.
Yeah, exactly. And Rich texts him. He says, without question, Soto passed the eye test, flying colors, unbelievably good. And another thing, Jason, that not only fun playing a game, and I know we don't get points for this in fantasy, but defensively, these guys are ridiculous fielders. I mean, their arms, their glove, everything about them. It's good. Like Dan said, you talk about 22, 23 years old. The one good thing about this is this game is in good hands moving forward, depending no matter where it goes. At least we have this young talent to watch. And speaking about young talent, we're about an hour and 3 into this show. I want to keep this under an hour and 15, and we are banging right into that mark, which is great. Talk about Super Bowl, DFS. We'll have a little fun with this because, listen, no matter what, I'm putting a lineup in. I'm in the DraftKings showdown. I got the $100,000 free ticket. I'm definitely joining it 100%. So let's just do it this way. I'm not going to expect to build a lineup. I just want to get your guys' opinions on a couple things. We talked last time on Heat Ratio Live about MVPs, so I want to parlay that into DFS plays. Undervalued guys. We don't even have to give a value. I have the values up so I can let you guys know what they are. But guys, in your opinion, okay, that are going to be really good plays in your flex spots, after, because a lot of these are based on, your crowns, your 1.5 guys. But let's just talk about quarterbacks right off the bat. Let's just go Brady versus Mahomes. Okay, so you have Mahomes, who, again, I know it's not fantasy, but the over and under for Mahomes is 325 yards. The over and under for Tom Brady is 299. The number for Mahomes in DraftKings is 12,000. The number for Brady is 10,000. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I love Patrick Mahomes. I think this is going to be an inevitably high-scoring event, but I'm not paying 12,000 for Mahomes when I can get 10,000 for Brady. Just my opinion. I think Brady is going to be neck and neck with Mahomes. I think Brady is going to show, guess what? I'm still here. I don't need Bill. I'm not saying Tampa's going to win, but I would take the $2,000 drop and give it to Tom Brady as my quarterback. What do you think, Jason?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I actually think, going out on a limb a little bit, I think Tampa Bay wins this game. So I saw their projections earlier today. I forget what site it was. I think it was Pro Football Focus or something like that. They had I think Mahomes was 26.5 points and Brady was 25.9 points. And like you said, $2,000 difference for not even a point, half a point. I think the way to differentiate yourself is to stack Tampa Bay. And I feel like that's what I'm going to try to do. You're going to have to hit on some, like you said, there's not that much difference, and everybody's going to play the same higher end guys, the Kelce's and the Hills and the Mike Evans and guys like that. You're going to have to find that random Scotty Miller type or even lower that hits that touchdown. That's going to end up winning you some money.
Yeah, no, you're 100% correct. That's exactly my thought process. Because again, like you said, you always go for the top guys. I picked Antonio Brown as being my dark horse MVP of this game. He's a receiver at $6,200 that I think could really be a difference maker in your lineup. Dan, one of your guys, McCall Hardman.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Right?
Jason and I were having a conversation. I'm in a pretty high-priced fantasy football league, playoff league that I do, and it's a weekly suicide league. So on one side of the ledger, I have no Tyreek Hill.
Okay.
And basically, and I have no Mike Evans, no Godwin. So I basically have, or maybe I have, I think I have Godwin as my only elite receiver, and then I have Antonio Brown or McCall Hardman. And I'm leaning McCall Hardman as having the better game.
Hey, listen, and
Jason, honestly, and I texted Jason for his advice on that, and I think you agreed with me.
Yep, I did.
So,
look at the numbers, right? I mean, Antonio Brown 6,200, McCall Hardman 5,600. But just for prime production, I mean, I think you have to. I don't know what's going on with Sammy Watkins if he's playing or not. But I think Hardman's really stepped up over the last couple of weeks.
Right. And they use him in so many ways.
Yep.
Jet sweep, formations. He's basically, he's Tyreek Hill Jr. And they
I was going to say that too. Yeah. He's so fast, just like Hill.
They drafted him to be Tyreek Hill because Tyreek Hill was supposed to be suspended for a year, and I think we were all shocked that he got a slap on the wrist. So now they have, so they wound up for that year with Hill, Hart, and another guy that totally irrelevant from the Super Bowl, maybe not, is I think one day Byron Pringle is going to be a value guy in this league.
Oh, definitely.
They have so much. They just have so much talent. It's insane. And there's a guy out of the blue that could get a touchdown, and it wouldn't shock me.
Well, I'll give you guys a very interesting thing here that I noticed when I was looking through this. Now, and I get it. We talked last night about one of the guys for the game, Leonard Fournette, maybe really exerting himself as that guy. He's gotten mainly all the touches in the playoffs. But Ronald Jones is only at 2,200. I mean, honestly, listen, I get it. If you look at his last two games, he really hasn't done much. But in the Super Bowl, all things are on the table. All cards are being dealt. And if I'll tell you what, for 2,200, you throw like a flyer on Ronald Jones and you hit on all your big money guys, you could really do some damage. Honestly, because I'll tell you what, in a high scoring game, I can see Ronald Jones at least getting a touchdown. And for 2,200, they get 10 points from a guy. That's tremendous. I can't believe he's 2,200. I really can't. What do you think, Jason?
And if he gets two touchdowns, you said get a touchdown. If he gets 2 touchdowns, he breaks the slate. So
yeah, exactly.
I don't hate that. I play him every week, and it's burned me pretty much every week.
Yeah.
But I just like the guy for some reason, so I'll probably play him.
But for 2,200, I just can't.
No, you have to, because now you can build other players around that kind of value.
Yep, that's what Andre says.
Imagine if you have
low risk, big reward, right?
You have him and Hardman, and then look who else you could stack in that lineup.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. So if you put Hardman in your lineup, right? I'm going to do it right now as we're sitting here, and this is how much money you would have left. I mean, you just, hey Dan, here you go. Here's what Byron Pringle, $1,800. Just so you know, so he's another guy that can really be a value.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I just hyped him up, but let's see what we got before we put Byron in the lineup.
So right now, let's say for all intents and purposes, I'll see if you guys agree with me. Let's pick a captain. We got about 5 minutes left. So let's do one of these fun lines where you get a 1.5 time, 1.5 times point total, right? So who would you pick as that guy? Are we going quarterback, or would you go with the inevitable Travis Kelce? What do you think? Right now, I can tell you right now, Travis Kelce would cost you 16.5. Tom Brady would be 15,000. Tyreek Hill would be 15.6. Patrick Mahomes 18,000.
Oh, give me Brady.
That's
I
a
want
big
Brady
number.
all day.
Yeah, I think you have to go quarterback, but Kelsey's going to get 11 and 150. You just know, that's what
But let's for budget values, we'll put Brady in there at 15 grand. Okay, then we'll put Hardman and we'll put Ronald Jones, and let's put Travis Kelce in there at 11,000. So right now, hypothetically, okay, and just I'll ask you guys, Mike Evans or Chris Godwin?
Evans.
Yeah, I go Evans. What do you think?
Evans. Yeah, Evans for me too.
So let's start.
I think Godwin gets more catches, but Evans is going to get the TDs.
Touchdowns. Yeah.
So right now, okay, the way it stands, if we put Brady in as our captain at 15 grand, we have Brady, Kelce, Evans, throw Ronald Jones and McCall Hardman just for the heck of it to see what happens. We have $7,800 left. That's a really good lineup. $7,800. I guess would get you Fournette. Now, if you didn't like Hardman, right, just hypothetically, you take Hardman out, you could put Chris Godwin in. If you're like, you could put Tyreek Hill in, okay, at 10-4, and that still gives you $3 grand left, okay, which I think is a tremendous value.
And let me guess, Scotty Miller's available.
Oh, here we go. I'm gonna tell you what I'm thinking here, guys. I'm putting in Gronk at $3 grand. Now,
I like that.
Yeah.
Right.
He's been invisible for 4 weeks though.
Yeah,
but this is his time, right?
Right. I was going to say it's his time, and this plays right into what Jason was saying. This is a Tampa Bay stack, what we just did, and we just did this on a fly. So you look at our lineup. It's Tom Brady, Tyreek Hill. Then we have another buck in Ronald Jones, another buck in Mike Evans, another buck in Gronk, and then we have Travis Kelce. And we have zero money left. I think that's a really good lineup. And again, and here's the thing to everybody out there, you could play around with this. Like look what just happened. We had McCall Hardman in there. We basically took McCall Hardman out and made him into Tyreek Hill and Rob Gronkowski. That's the way we were able to formulate the lineup. If you think. It's now, crazy, but it's true.
Out of curiosity, though, if we left Hardman in, you said Fournette would have taken
the spot. So the best player we could have gotten would have been Fournette.
So Fournette, Hardman, and Hill, Gronk. I go Hill, Gronk all day of the week over those two. How about you two, Jason?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so that's why you tanker. That's perfect.
Yeah, it's exactly why. I'll tell you what, I'm playing this lineup. 100%. I'm playing this lineup. I like this lineup a lot. This is a good lineup.
Post it on Twitter.
What's that?
We'll post it on Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is what we do. And again, if you hit, let us know. Andre checking in said, wouldn't be surprised if this Super Bowl is won by someone that's not on the radar, like a Butler in the Seahawks and Patriots Super Bowl. So low-cost players are way more valuable than we think.
Yep.
100%.
100%. Yep.
What's Darrell Williams' value, out of curiosity?
Who's that?
Darrell Williams. What's his
Darrell Williams is 5,200. So so again, I know Dan, you like him, so that could be a decent value too. 100%. Yeah. All I know is there's going to be a lot of points scored, and hopefully everybody gets prime time production. But we are at 1 hour 15. We did it again. I love it. Been tremendous show, guys. It's great to be back on the horse. I missed this the last couple of weeks. Needed this outlet. It's been wonderful. Again, follow us at Heat Ratio Sports. Follow Jason, with Fairway to Heaven, all about the birds. Follow Dan, Flyer and Ice. Again, we have so much stuff going on the network. We just did book another show. They'll be coming out in the next couple of days. So now we're getting to the point where, fellas, we're getting 2 shows per day, which I'll tell you what, man, this is fantastic. So again, at Heat Ratio Sports on all digital formats. Check us out. Subscribe if you're listening on YouTube. And like I always say, stay safe, stay healthy, and we will catch you next week.